Okay, so this is the first recording actually. So you're my first interview,
Oh, ako ba naman, no?
which is great for me because I feel like we can just talk casually. We've met
Mm.
a couple of times now.
Yes, yes.
So welcome to our listeners of Good Art, Bad Artist. Gino, first of all, may mga pinrepare akong stuff here. I don't know if you
Mm.
remember these stickers.
Yes, of
Like,
course.
what year are these?
I think 2000, hindi ako sure. Basta yung ganyang, yung merch ko na maliliit, they're from 2017 to 19. So,
Uh-huh.
around those areas.
So to our listeners, I'm showing mga stickers ni Gino na parang portraits, basically
Oo.
faces lang with captions na, what is mabangbang, by the way?
Hindi mabangbang. So, basically, unkillable, untouchable. Parang, ano siya,
Ah,
expression siya dito na parang powerful ka, hindi ka mabangbang.
wow. Is it, sorry, hindi ko alam, what dialect is that?
Ano yan? Hiligay, no? Nagilinggo. Endearment siya actually. Parang pag, for
Mm-hmm.
example, you see your friend, rumarampa siya, and then parang
Oh,
sobrang confident. So, hindi siya
oo.
mabangbang.
So, ayun nga guys, to our listeners, I have stickers here now. Obviously, hindi ko dinidikit anywhere. And what I remember about receiving these are, you just handed them to me, parang sa Cubao Expo or sa Escolta. I'm not sure which one. Tama ba pagkakaalala ko? Or baka ninakaw
Baka
mo?
ano, hindi, baka sa Bacolod yan. Kasi I haven't been to Cubao Expo or Escolta. I
Oh,
haven't been to neither. Baka nung nag-show tayo.
siguro, ayun, that's another thing na I want to talk about, which is Gino and I have actually, well, Gino, that is my first and only gallery show. So,
Exhibition,
yes, exhibition na we worked on Descendants, which is a gallery show where queer artists gathered some erotica, homoerotica art. What
mm,
year was that?
2019 din ata. 19.
19. Yeah. Oh, March.
Oo.
I think March 2019.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
Malapit sa
still.
birthday ko.
Uy, March. What's your birthday?
Ano yon? I think March, nag-open tayo ng March 1, tapos yung birthday ko March 3, then hindi kayo nakasama sa beach. Kasi
Pisces
nag-beach day
ka.
yon eh.
Oh,
Oo, Pisces
with
ako.
Tokwa, right?
Oo.
And speaking of, ayun nga, speaking of your art, one of the first questions I have here is, like, I think everyone who at this point knows your work can tell na you are so, I don't know if you will like this, you're so productive with art, so prolific. The thing that I like about it is a lot of artists, when they produce as much, like literally every day, you can tell that it's manadali. You can tell that the
Oo.
quality is low with the excuse na there's a lot of it, so they lower the quality of what it looks like, the design. And,
Workmanship.
and what I respect so much about you is that they're all still good. So my question about this is, what's your work ethic? What's your work principle? And where do
Um,
you get your energy to make as much stuff?
I think kasi yung siguro yung pagiging productive ko, dala na siya ng I see it also as practice. So for example, if I haven't been producing like that much volume of work, I don't think my brush work would improve. Kasi
Mm,
most of my ink works, they depend a lot on contrast and parang highly graphic silang work. So
yeah,
I think
yeah.
doon nanggagaling yung pagka-finished niya kasi you can tell which areas are shadows, which areas are like highlights kasi sobrang sharp ng contrast. I think yun yung daya ng ink. Not really daya, but parang sleight of hand nung ink brush.
Mm, mm, mm.
Kasi you have large areas of black na if you see it as parang someone who draws with pencil, it takes a long while to fill up that much space.
Yeah.
But understand that I'm using big brushes with Sumi ink. So
Mhm.
parang nasa-shortcut na yung ganong time aspect na I don't have to go. So technically, if you measure like how much I draw in kilometers, if I use pencil, I would need to parang finish a kilometer for a drawing. But if
Gets,
I
gets.
used a brush, I only walk, quote unquote, with my brush for around 200 meters. Especially in my merch, I use a lot of tawag doon, Sharpies, Sumi ink, kasi they can cover areas very fast. Tsaka,
Yes.
yun lang. I think dahil repetitive yung practice ko every day, I've developed a sense of interpreting light and shadow na
Mhm.
nalalapag ko siya in ink. Which is, ano siya, parang legible siya na, yan, mata yan ilong yan. Kahit squiggles
Yes.
lang sila. That came with practice. Seeing something, trying to draw it, and then scrutinizing how I interpreted the object or the face in a few strokes. Then gradually improving my reading. So, bale, parang reading comprehension siya with images.
I feel like the way you say it, you know how when dancers already have moves, their
Yes.
go-to steps, di ba?
Mm.
Na
Muscle
parang,
memory.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And
Muscle
ayun nga, like,
memory siya.
for example, even with your works here, the way you draw eyes are very, it pops in a way na there are tiny lines around the eyes. And I feel like that's such a Gino approach to this drawing eyes.
Sobrang heavy yung influence ng graphic design sa akin, especially Asian graphic design. So, sa sun rays yan ang gagaling. Everything is sun rays.
Wow, okay.
So, yan
Okay.
yung concept ng mata. Parang outwardly, eyelashes siya. Pero that's how a lot of Japanese posters, that's how they lead the eyes. Is
Mm-hmm.
with directional lines.
Oh nga no, I get what you mean. And yeah, I think Japan, when you think of anime or their graphic art, very key point yung eyes. That if the eyes are pretty, the face will be pretty.
Tapos ito din, parang yung parallel sa Japanese design or East Asian Oriental design compared sa European art canon, sobrang apparent yung importance ng line rhythm sa East Asian or Asian flat
Mm.
illustration kasi that's how you convey movement, hindi by gradual shadows. That's kung baga fluent na yung mata ko magbasa how an illustration, for example, interprets a twisting hand with the use of 8 lines
Mm. Mm.
compared to parang reading it as this is nandito yung light, nandito yung shadow. So
Yes.
parang yung nangyari na meron ng translator yung utak ko na when I see an object in 3D, I somehow have a sense of how I will interpret that in means of lines.
And when I remember when I discovered brush pens, I was like, this is my life. Because
Magical.
yeah, parang this is my personality now.
Oo, sobra.
Honestly, kaya lang din ako nag-draw ng erotica dati. Kasi nga, the body is such a fun thing to draw with line art. Like,
Yes.
and I get what you mean about, yun nga, parang light and shading, it's definitely a Western thing.
I think a lot of yung remnants ng East Asian or at least kahit Indonesian, Thai illustrations, it's always suggestions of form, not actual form.
Parang it's really a mix of the artist's own flavoring. Diba na at ganito ko siya gustong i-draw. Even if it's not necessarily how it looks in real life. How I would describe your work in general would be, you know, when you see something vibrant and when you close your eyes, suddenly it's still there. That's how I think of your work.
Parang ano siya, sunlight na nababurn yung eyes mo, pagdikit mo, meron pang remnants.
Yung nag-glare siya pero it's yun nga, the contrast is so
contrast siya
in your work. Another thing that I think people will remember in your art is your use of iconography. I think no one, like, I love that your work is very reminiscent of Filipino culture without being too on the nose na, uy, Pinoy, tikba lang. You know what I mean? Uy, Pinoy jeep. Like, you're able to catch Filipino motifs in a way na we all see that and we all know it. But we forget na, oh nga, that's very Pinoy. When you use posporo graphics as aesthetic, or yung photo series mo na sa 2x2 passport print shop, di ba? Yung kay Lins ba yun? Ate Lins?
Lins Photography Studio.
I mean, shout out. ayun din yung another thing I respect from you as an artist na more than your style, the thinking behind it is so nice. Di ba in your balaclava ski mask project, yung mga neon glow in the dark rosary, yung mga Chinese charm, yung
Oo,
ornamental charms.
abubot.
And my question is, how does stuff like that come to you? Do you actively seek na ano pa yung pwede kong gamitin? Or is it more on you're just outside, tas you see this object and you think, ay, magawa nga tong art thing.
Ganito, oo. Actually, all of my best, I think, my work na parang nagre-resonate usually is those with, parang, uh, humor siya in a sense na it's not trying to be funny, but it's more of absurd pairings. So, usually when a good idea happens, it's the first thing in my mind that parang yung first sentence is, you know what's gonna be funny if this will be mixed
Oh.
with that? Visual metaphors sila na you don't necessarily think of pairing together. Like yun nga, yung ski mask na pang magnanakaw or for concealing, then yung rosaries or anting-anting. So parang all of my best ideas usually start with that kind of statement na, you know what would be cool, what would be funny.
Mm, mm.
Parang smart siyang wink. Yan. My works usually are winks. They're not announcements of genius. They're just
Uh-huh.
winks.
And that's why then I think ayun nga that also resonates with the what's my word earlier, the prolificness of it. Na you're not
Mm.
necessarily established na this is you being
Mm.
your art. This is
Oo.
art. But it's more like ayun nga parang oh this is fun to do, this is fun to make. Some of the things you do for fun are like for art shows already. You know what I mean? Like it's
Oo.
already for exhibits, but you do it like for your Instagram that week. And you
Oo.
know, I respect that so much na I think a problem din kasi with artists today, and I'm guilty of this na kailangan your work has to be this grand thing. That
Mm.
this is who you are and this is who I am and this is what I do. This is me. This is my manifesto. And I
Mm.
think what we can learn from you is that you can do something, it could be your best idea at the moment, pero just do it already.
Oo, ganun siya. Actually, I believe talaga yung art is the activity, yung artwork, ano lang siya, residue ng activity. As you said, I'm doing a lot of things in different directions. But yung common lang nila dun is yung siguro yung thought process na parang, number one, it should be, hindi siya clever, parang mischievous siyang fun. Na you wouldn't think
Mm.
object A and object B would be together in an image,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
try to make it work and I come up with a metaphor. And number two, if one or two people get the wink, I'm already satisfied.
Well, I think for me as an audience, I didn't know well ako lang, I didn't know I'm
Mm.
supposed to see it as something funny to me
Mm.
because I think it's because you're so talented, you're so skillful. So parang ako I approach it as a serious like symbolism, work of symbolisms. I was actually gonna ask, how do you want us to react ba with your projects?
Parang usually, alam mo, wala akong attempts at controlling the audience's
Mm,
parang reception of it. I have this kind of acceptance na we all step into an artwork or experience an artwork differently because we all have different backgrounds. The symbols I use in there have a meaning to me that I can inject my intent while making it. But at the same time, wala akong monopoly ng weight ng symbol na yon. There are works na parang Filipinos from abroad can understand. There are works that only Filipinos in the Philippines who
yeah.
live in this kind of neighborhood understands. And then meron ding works na parang within 5 kilometer radius lang ng bahay namin yung nakakagets. So parang I am aware of how symbols affect people, but at the same time, hindi ko pwedeng sabihin din sa audience na this kind of fish only symbolizes that. Kasi nga, I think doon yung fun ng art.
Mm,
The gray areas in which we experience art differently, that's where actually art blossoms. Not the product, not the image, not who makes it, but how many people experience it and how varied these experiences are. I think yun yung nag-enrich ng artwork. And then I post a lot of unfinished or work in progress things kasi I gauge how I put something out by means of the reaction I get out of it. So the production in itself, collaborative na siya. Hindi siya galing sa singular figure alone in the studio na parang hermit artist na parang create something out of nothing.
Mm.
I create things based on ano din siya, reaction, conversations, exchanges. So it's always collaborative and I wouldn't be able to make my work if I wasn't receptive, I think, of how people perceive things. But yung start ng process ko is always parang, wouldn't it be funny if ganito ganyan? If
Mm.
lagyan ko ng teardrops na parang Mama Mary, yung balaklava.
Ayun nga, actually, I noticed nga na probably every work you put out is always two things put together. You know what I
Ganun
mean?
siya. Na
Like,
blender.
yeah. Like, if it's a man, if it's a hot guy, tapos biglang may yung birds ng Precious Hearts Romances logo,
Oo. Merong
or,
ano talaga siya.
yeah,
Parang despite in spite, parang ganun siya.
I guess my other question is, so you said the process to you is parang, am I right, na more important to you than whatever the output looks like? Kasi it's
Oo.
just a residue. Do you notice that in other artists' work na, ay, ginawa niya lang to for this, or ay, gusto niya lang na ito ang maging effect? Or I guess what I mean by that is, do you see significant differences with the way you make art and when you look at how others do it? And does that difference affect you in any way?
Usually kasi, yun nga, Instagram or like, especially now, we can't visit art shows or we can't mingle with each other sa mga fairs. Parang I think mas lalong na-heighten yung focus on the finished product.
That's true.
Parang product-centric. I think early on ko siya na-catch in my practice in which I think magiging valuable din siya to people who listen is the realization that, for example, on average, in Philippine art, no, you have stages of parang you're a student artist, young artist, emerging artist, established artist, and a senior. Parang meron ganong
Oh, may
tier. So
ranking.
parang, for me, na kung gusto kong basagin yan or gusto kong i-redefine yan, I should know it like at the back of my hand. So parang may expectation yung mga tao on average na you're an established artist by the time na parang you're in your early 40s to your 50. And I told myself at around 19, 18, 19, I was like, I must realize that I can't make the work that I want when I'm 40 if I don't make the necessary work now. So parang that early on, nagka-acceptance ako ng bad work na I wasn't beating myself up na pangit. Pangit naman talaga siya kasi I'm 19. What I realized is what I'm doing now will inform what I'll do when I'm older. So if what I'm doing now I don't like, how much worse could it get when I'm 50? That's how I also got to be softer with myself and my art from the past. Kasi nga, if I didn't do these kinds of things, for example, if I didn't hyperfixate on candy wrappers nung early 20s ko, I wouldn't be able to train myself to make art with limited colors. Now, syempre, nagiging sikat na yung ephemera, nagiging popular na siya kasi nga very graphic. Pero nung time na nagsistart ako mag-design, yun nga, that's why I started sa Shea Archives because I couldn't find anyone else who actively archived a local ephemera. Nung bata ako, I was so sentimental that I would keep candy wrappers in my pockets for days.
Wow.
Kasi nga, I wouldn't like to throw them away. So I think that's how I got to my interest in these kinds of art forms.
What I noticed nga about that is, like in your work, the idea of it is just important as the skill, like the thinking behind it. I think a lot of like artists today end up fixating with the quote unquote skills, technical skills, na parang hindi na siya fun, wala na siyang
Mm.
humor, as you said na
Diba?
it's just a good drawing na maganda yung lighting, na maganda yung shading. Pero,
Mm.
okay, you're talented in this, but what's the idea behind it? And
Mm.
not even a huge meaning, not even a
Oo,
life-changing
hindi.
meaning, but more like,
Diba?
ano yung naisip mo na I'm gonna draw like, let's say, men, and each one of them is forming a letter, like an alphabet.
Oo.
Di ba? Parang,
Oo.
and honestly, I don't know if you feel the same. That's kind of what bores me when I look at art online. Parang it's a flexing competition of your skill. And to
Mm.
me, what I enjoy more than, let's say, skill alone is na naisip niya yon. You know that feeling when
Oo.
you see a project na somebody did na you're like, oh my God, naisip niya yun. Oo
Hindi ko
nga,
naisip yun. Oo.
like what you said about sa mga sachet archives Instagram mo na naisip ko tuloy yung mga packaging ng mga pom-pom, zeb-zeb.
Oo.
Yeah.
Yung candy.
And it's fucking art.
I think kasi that's not an individual, I in my analysis it's not an individual artist's problem, it's in the school.
Mm.
Na, di ba, I understand na merong, I agree na hindi siya art for art's sake, na art exists for itself. I agree materially and politically. But also, you shouldn't police artworks that are not dealing with grand things in life. This can become a slippery slope of
Mm.
assigning a role to art that is sometimes unattainable, or that's not what the artist meant to do. Kaya nga, what I think nasa practice ko siya na I do a lot of small scale things, not just literally na maliit sila. It's a wink. A wink doesn't have this, you don't need a thesaurus to wink back.
Yeah.
So, I think yan yung vital points ng work or what I try to achieve. That number one, it's simple, that a lot of people from different walks of life have a sort of entry point. And number two, for you to recognize a wink and for you to wink back, it means you're communicating. Kasi nga, communication yung winking eh. So, hindi siya intellectual measure. Hindi din siya technical measure. It's a measure of how I can make someone wink back.
And
parang make someone see that I'm winking.
Yeah, and I think it affirms so much about being a person. You know what I mean? Na it doesn't always have to be a comment on the grand scheme of things, but like we all know, I mean, we all know Divisoria, we all know Candy, di ba? We all know these Precious Hearts romances. And ayun nga, I think sometimes in our attempt to say something so bad, na we forget the small gestures that art can do.
It's a very masculine urge to kind of want to see everything as a shout, as a scream, as a very loud thing. Na whispers are as important, and I would argue whispers and gossiping are more important because these are communications that are not measured by strength. Diba? You whisper, you want to say something, but you want to make sure it is heard. When screaming kasi is just you displaying that you're able to scream.
Lecturing. It's like lecturing. This is what's right.
Diba? So parang if you're already assigning your audience what to think, paano pa sila mag-i-engage sa work mo? We forget that play is as important as work. And in art, the lines can be blurred. The intention should be kind of not just wanting to attain technical skill, but being able to communicate with that technical skill. I'm okay with realism as long as it is communicating and not saying that this is a fan.
Yes.
And
because you also have realist work, pero lagi siyang may twist. Like when you work that is realistic, it's almost like you make something realistic and then you make
Sinisira ko.
bawi. Yeah, it's
Oo,
suddenly
meron ako always inspired kasi I don't want people to kind of ano lang, parang I always try to make my work in a conversation within a plane. So
mm,
hindi siya one thing singularly happening, existing, then me depicting that existence. It's always, for example, a portrait is existing but there's a snake around it. So it's two sentient beings interacting and we're viewers. So parang ikaw din, hindi mo alam saan pupunta yung ahas. Ano gagawin ng tao? So wala siyang set parang climax yung work. And I think yun yung goal ko. Hindi ko gustong gumawa ng something na tapos and it's such a challenging thing to do in a static image.
and that definitely rings true to your work na, especially recently, I love na I can tell na the next day, you had a new idea about something you did the day before. May bagong naisip si Gino na gawin dun sa
Na
image
na-connect
na
ko
yun.
siya.
Yeah, and I love
Oo.
that. And also, I noticed na with you, my impression then, because I think you were known more before in the gallery scene. And
Oo.
when I saw na you were in social media so much more, I had this thought na parang, oh, isn't he more on the serious framed
Fine
image
art.
on the wall,
Oo.
fine art level? Tapos ay nga, you started posting so much more often. And it reflects also what you said nga na you don't want to be in this hierarchy. You don't want to
Oo.
be this, oh, the gallery artist, the social media artist.
Tsaka I think a friend described my work, sabi, si Mayumi Hirano from Load na Dito Project. She described my work as meron siyang fluid distribution. So parang it's the image can exist in different forms and in different
Mm,
platforms.
mm.
In graphic design, parang letters, malayo pa lang sila, mag-scroll ka lang sa Twitter timeline, meron na siyang legible thing, either
Yeah.
sa shape, composition,
You
or
definitely
color.
do that. It's very iconic from the word icon na it's
Oo.
first a shape, it's first
A
a
shape,
color, and
I
then
think ano siya, nanggaling siya sa, kasi hindi ako advertising graduate, digital media artist ako. So I was trained in school to be part of production pipelines for games and movies. So think of mga Iron Man, mga AAA movies, games na parang Assassin's Creed. And then one of the main principles of design that I apply in my work, natutunan ko lang siya kasi nag-sit in ako sa isang advertising class. Na parang my teacher told us in old school advertising in store design, mag-display ka ng dilata. Yung eye level,
ah
dilata, lower level, na parang what I found out in the eye level products is they use primary colors. Variations of the primaries.
yeah.
I think our eyes are trained to spot yellow, blue, and red.
I told you I'm scrolling through Instagram now. Like if I scroll fast, it's those colors, red, yellow, and
Ito
blue.
talaga, oo. Number one, economically speaking, I can find red, yellow, and blue paint kahit nasa bukirin pa ako. If I get the most basic things, can I make a compelling image out of them? Parang
Yeah.
hindi naman siya scarcity mindset. It's more of, kasi I'm from the province, and when I was studying in college, we have a fine arts program here. Hindi accessible sa amin yung Diovir, wala kaming malaking national bookstore. We had to make do with what we had in these kinds of small stores. And I was trained in digital imaging, 3D. All I got to afford at that time were the basic colors of the tubes. Diba? You have these
Mm.
5-color set of paints
Mm-mm.
na because of that limitation and my parang inclination towards poster art, I got to train myself to kind of have this language of knowing where to put blue, where to put yellow and red and their variations. Kasi nga
Yes.
they were all I had.
I completely understand that coming from Laguna na
Mm.
the limit is what's in national bookstore, and you really learn how to like like,
Maximize.
yeah, to fuck it up na ito lang yung what I have. And sometimes the limit literally helps with the creativity. When
Yes, diyan yung main thing sa work ko. Actually, the limitation informs the work. That's
yeah,
why I have this plan of relocating at an undisclosed province. But I'll be relocating myself in the next few months, and I will try to make work out of a small room. For me this time, if I wanted to keep reinventing and to keep learning new languages or new techniques in making work, I also should actively make myself be in places and situations that challenge those impulses again.
yes. I think when you have, like, in terms of material sources, sometimes when you have everything, I think it also kind of stunts your growth. And
Confusing siya.
definitely, definitely. Parang and also you learn more when you have to adapt and adjust, I think.
Oh, sobrang, I think marami akong techniques na na-learn ko dahil sa scarcity na hindi ko siya magagamit na technique on works with better materials if I didn't go through that kind of experimentation.
I love your work because I can tell na it's sincere about coming from the provincia environment. Like, do you notice? I don't know if you do na. Sometimes there's artists today who want to give a Filipino wink so bad.
Tapos I hate this word it's used oftentimes na parang condescending. Meron silang sinasabi na parang, oh, I wanna elevate Filipino aesthetic. So parang when
Yeah,
you're saying na you wanna elevate it, you're already condescendingly saying na it's below. When in fact, you have to respect these things as they are. And when you use them respectfully and with parang grace and care,
yeah,
that's how you become fluent. Kasi nga,
yeah.
you take them as they are, not kind of trying to elevate them or brand them into something.
Yeah, borrowing from cultural motives from
Oo.
that the middle class are familiar with. A lot of people, I think, do that as an artist trick. As an
Oo.
artist na, look at me, I'm drawing people eating kwek-kwek. And you can tell,
Oo.
at least me, I can tell na they're doing it to almost congratulate themselves.
Merong performances minsan, like especially in older artists whose work didn't look like that, and then when they realize that there's this new language forming, like suddenly shift. I'm more forgiving on younger artists trying to explore their surroundings kasi I also started, I mean, I'm just lucky na embellishment is encouraged in our household kasi nanay ko seamstress. Tapos religious siya. So parang walang masyadong masculine, parang dapat ganito, dapat yung ganyang element of art may use siya. Kasi pag wala siyang use, walang ganong thing sa bahay namin.
Mm,
My mom would decorate everything kasi seamstress siya, designer siya. So I think I got lucky in that sense na embellishment wasn't frowned on upon sa bahay
yeah,
ko. Na I would
yeah,
understand na a lot of people, especially male artists, at the beginning of their practice, they feel like they have to prove this technical skill. In the middle of it, they realize na, I can actually use these kinds of Filipino things and I wouldn't be ashamed of them dapat. And sometimes it can come across as someone exoticizing themselves. Pero
yeah.
I think it's a welcome progress din na parang baka this person grew up in a household or studied in a school who put so much importance in the utility of design that they frowned upon embellishment, na they're just trying to unlearn that. Parang ganon. It's welcome improvement when people try to explore those things. But then we have to remind ourselves then na parang these aesthetics aren't just for design exercises. They're real and
Yeah.
they're experienced by people.
Okay, referring on our title, the final question for each episode
Uh,
is, what makes a quote unquote good art and what makes a quote unquote bad artist?
for me, yung interpretation ko of good art is for me to genuinely enjoy or ruminate or marinate on an artwork. Hindi siya condescending object na parang, oh, this amount of people can get it and kung hindi mo gets, edi yun na yun.
Mm,
Parang good art for me are artworks that anyone can walk into the artwork and get something out of it. So it doesn't have to be yun nga, conversations doesn't have to be intellectual debates. It can be as simple and as fast as a wink and can be as long as a debate, just as long
mm.
as the artwork sparks an exchange.
Yeah, especially right now on social media, and I'm guilty of this na the idea that your work has to say something, you know?
Oo.
And I think what I'm learning from you right now is that like art should open a space instead of fill it. Does that make
Tama.
sense?
Parang ganun
Yeah,
siya. Kasi prescriptive art is constricting. You fence people in a meaning. Yun nga, the measure of good art for me, not even for my own artwork, but for the artwork I love, is for people to be able to bring something with them, experience the art, and them getting something out of it. So parang, ano siya, hindi siya pwedeng one way lang na, oh, this is the art object, look at it. Dapat it's
yes.
an exchange.
And I'm so happy hearing this kasi I think I'm forgetting that, and thank you for reminding our listeners. Now, what makes a bad artist? I mean, I know it's subjective, pero for anong bad practices mo or whatever?
Siguro I've considered there are times in my life where I've considered myself as a bad artist is when I was so sure of everything. Yun lang. When you're so sure of everything, you're a bad artist. Because you're not
Gets that.
open
Yeah,
for mending, for nebulous ideas. Because that then prevents you from having exchanges.
yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm so happy you're my first.
Thank you.
Oh, and final segment is called Recommend Me Shit. So you could recommend artists, you could recommend activities, you could just recommend me or the listeners something that you want us to do, you want us to check.
I've had this person introduce me body of I don't read poetry usually because I'm scared of it.
I think we can blame schools who approach poems kasi like math.
Oo, na
Diba?
prescriptive siya.
Oo,
So
na
yun, ang
eto yun.
i-recommend ko, what I will recommend is for you to find Alfian Saat's Invisible Manuscript. So it's a collection of poetry from a queer man from the late 90s in Singapore. It's the first time I've seen myself reflected in a page of a poetry book. It's a visual poetry na I enjoy. I genuinely enjoy.
I think I will personally look for that. Alfian Saad, The Invisible
The
Manuscript.
Invisible Manuscript.
I will include it in the description for this episode. You have anything else you want to talk about that we haven't touched on yet? Anything on your mind or what about anything at all?
Ano lang, any kind of notions of fine art versus commercial art, delete that shit.
You keep teaching me, I think, through your art na art is literally everywhere. Like, 2x2 pictures are fucking art. Diba?
Like, and just as long as you have fun with it and you approach it with the mindset that you're creating something, it's art.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
literally art.
Sobrang cliche nung everything around us has art in it, pero it's true, no? Anything to promote before we go?
Stan Luna, check ano, just draw every day, guys. Just draw every day. Your hand will teach you things your teachers cannot.
Wow. Ganda nan. Sige, let's end with that if it's okay, no?
Yes.